Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy So What Day and happy Webcast Day. That's right. Today is the day, finally, that we are going live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time over at sewingonline.sulky.com with our gingerbread puff ornaments webcast. This is a free event over on our education platform. All you have to do is register for it, and you can join us at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to be taking you through these in the hoop ornaments that you can create, and you can use them for all sorts of things. Of course, you can hang them on the tree, but I'm also going to give you some inspiration for different ways of using these designs and displaying these cute little ornaments. So you won't want to miss it. Also, when you register, you will receive a free design from Sulky. It's another in the hoop design, but it's a coaster. And it's a great winter design, not necessarily holiday specific, but you can get all the tutorial and the design files to create this cute little coaster. So once you get kind of the instructions for this ornament, you will be, well versed in the hoop projects, and you will want to tackle that freebie as well. So you'll have a lot of holiday inspiration today, not only on So What, but also on our webcast. So make sure you are registered. We have very few kits left for this webcast, so I highly suggest you grab up one of those while you can and while they're on sale. This is what's included in the kit for today's webcast. It is puffy foam, felty, all these beautiful sulky poly deco threads, a 1-yard cut of cutaway plus stabilizer, and with these kit materials, you will be able to create 2 full sets of ornaments. So if you want to make a wreath or a garland or make these as gift tags or use some of the other inspiration I'm going to show you later this afternoon, you will have plenty of materials to create 8 ornaments. And this is a really great deal. I believe the kit is $34.99, $39.99, something like that. If you were to grab up all of these things individually, it would be a lot more because if you think about it, you would need to grab up a neutral assortment of felty, which is $14.99, and then you're only going to get a few sheets of the brown, a few sheets of the white, so you would need to supplement that, right? So you might also want to grab up a roll of felty in the white and the brown if you do want to create gingerbread men. I'm also going to show you how to create sugar cookies using some different colors of felty. And that puffy foam, if you've never worked with puffy foam, this is a really great introduction for it. Puffy foam creates great 3D dimension and texture in your embroidery designs. You actually lay it under your stitching and then you tear it away. So your stitching really pops off the surface and has this puffy effect. So we're actually going to use that in the ornament to give our gingerbread faces a little bit of puff and dimension. They're just so super cute. I can't get over it. Designed by Parker on the Porch, our friends for a while. Love her designs. She has the cutest aesthetic. So we're going to go over all of that this afternoon, but definitely grab up your kit because the sale price will be gone tonight. And then this kit will go up to retail price. We also are going to have a lot more product specials that you can find out about during the event. So if you do want to grab up more felty to make more ornaments or to make more holiday projects, felty is so great for a variety of things. You can grab that up at an exceptional deal today during the webcast. All right, so make sure you're registered for that, of course. Also, I wanted to mention we only have 7 spots left for our India tour. This is our trip with Craft Tours. Sulky comes along, and I will be teaching a hands-on workshop during this India tour. and also experiencing all of the excursions and wonderful scenery and everything we're going to do together in India. So I would love for you to come along, be my travel companions. And this trip is in March because that's when the Festival of Holi happens, and we will be able to experience that firsthand. It's just going to be an incredible trip. So make sure you put this on your wish list for the holidays so that you can have some really, really great bucket list travel planned for 2025. Speaking of that, we also have our Greece tour up for registrations, and it's already filling up. And I knew this one would because Greece is such an incredible destination. So you can check this tour out as well. I put links for both of them, as well as links for everything I'm talking about today so that you can go right on over, register for the Gingerbread Webcast, and you can go right on over to our travel pages over on the Craft Tours website and check those out. If you're not seeing all the links for everything I'm about to talk about today, make sure you hit that little more button, or it might say see more, depending on the platform that you are watching us on right now. And then the whole description will pop out for you, and you'll be able to link on over to all the products and everything I'm talking about. All right, lots of you saying hello. That's great. Happy to see all these familiar faces. Anita says, would these little faces be about the same size to use as a jar topper? What a cute idea. I love it. I hadn't even thought of that. All right, so I have one right here, and I wish I had a jar close by. And I'm trying to think, do you know the diameter of jar you're talking about? Because there are different sizes of mason jars too. I will say it covers the top of my giant coffee mug like just about perfectly. You might even be able to use it as a coaster. And you could cut your felty a little bit wider all the way around. So that's another use for it as well. And you could hang these up. So cute. So many ideas. I bet you could use that for a jar topper, but you do just need to measure the diameter of the jar you're talking about, and we could probably work with that. All right, great idea. Love that. All right, let's see. Sue says, I've got the ornaments kit, and I'm going to make them for my grandkids ornaments this year. I love that. My kids get a special grandparent ornament every year as well. That's a great idea. I love that it's handmade, and it's really special that, you made it for them, and then we'll keep it forever, and just great. Love it. All right, let's see. Oh, Mary, good to see you here. I'm signed up for Greece with you again. Looking forward to be traveling with you again. Me too. So excited. I actually told my son that you were on the tour, and he was like, please take me with you. All right. Sharon says, just got 3 rolls of felty to make Christmas cards. Ooh, I love that. All right. So let's get to today's tutorial because we have a lot to do later this afternoon for our Gingerbread Webcast. But I do want to share this great project with you. It's a card holder. So hopefully people are still sending actual cards in the mail for the holidays. I know I love getting them. I love getting a little handwritten note from somebody I haven't heard from maybe since last Christmas, or, whatever holiday you celebrate, right? I love getting the picture cards from all of my college friends to see their kids and their family and how everybody is growing up. It is one of my favorite things about the season. I know people are kind of getting away from doing this, and I'm just such a proponent of it. I love it. I know it's an expense. I know that it takes time. But, maybe you have a snow day or something, and you can just sit down and kind of address all of your cards together, or maybe doll out some of the responsibilities of the card making or the addressing the envelopes to different kids or something. But it's a really great tradition, and I love getting Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday, all the cards. So I thought I would come up with this little pocket wall hanging of sorts that you can slip your cards into. And if you want to hang them over the side of the little pockets to kind of display the pictures or whatever that you get, you can use it for that as well. So you can cover up your Happy Holidays applique if you want to, hang the card over the side. You can also change up the dimension of the pockets if they're a little bit too tall, because I found that once I put some of my cards inside, they just sank to the bottom. So it's really a good way to, preserve them. You can kind of take them out when you want to share them with others or look at them again. Or again, you can display them kind of hanging over the side of the pockets. So there's 2 pockets on this one. And if you want your card holder to say something else, like Merry Christmas or the Marches or, whatever you want it to say, be merry, that would be cute. You can definitely change up the applique to say whatever you want. You can also add 3 pockets to your card holder if you want. Make your pockets a little bit shorter. And then stack them. I'm going to show you how to create each pocket with or without applique, as the case may be. And then we'll layer them on our background piece and bind the whole thing as one, add a hanging sleeve, and we're good to go. This project I made with a fat quarter bundle. There's 1 fat quarter for the background, 1 fat quarter for the backing, and then I used a fat quarter for each pocket, but you'll have leftover fabric from that. And I used another fat quarter for the applique lettering, and yet again another fat quarter for the binding. So altogether, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fat quarters for this project. But again, I wanted to, choose a lot of different fabric prints that coordinated because I love this holiday collection from Ruby Star Society. And I found it maybe QuiltCon last year. I can't remember. So I've been holding on to it, but I love it because it has some metallic motifs printed on the fabric. So I knew it was going to look great with some sulky metallic threads. And I will go over that in a minute, but that's what I used to quilt my pockets and my background piece. There's also some stabilizer involved so that our pockets don't sag. There's also some foam involved to give this a little bit of squishy dimension. And the foam is a lot more rigid than, let's say, a piece of batting would be. But you could certainly use a piece of batting and maybe add some sulky soft and sheer or even fuse and stitch stabilizer to give it some more body so that it doesn't, sag once you start putting your cards in there. I know cards don't weigh a lot, but if you have a lot of friends, a lot of family, your cards might weigh it down. All right, so let's get started with it. Here is what it looks like, or what mine looked like when I filled it full of cards. And yes, I'm someone who keeps the cards from the previous year. And then when I get out all the decorations and things, I look at the cards again. I'm like obsessed, I guess. But I look at the cards again, and then it's so fun when you get another one that has maybe the same family, and you're like, look how they've grown, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm a sucker for all this. Love it. All right, so here's what my cards look like inside, and some of them stuck out of pockets while others kind of sink down. So you get the idea. You can, again, adjust the height of your pockets if you want more of the cards to be showing once you're displaying them. All right, so first off, we're going to prepare our backing and, sort of background fabric, the main square that we're working with. And all of the dimensions, everything I cut, all the instructions are on the Sulky blog. And I linked directly to the post in the description of today's live stream. So you don't have to take notes. You don't have to write anything down. You can get everything you need right off of that blog post. So head there for the full instructions. All right. So this is where I'm using the foam interlining. And there are a couple of companies that make this. You could also try fusible fleece if you can't find the foam. But foam is becoming more and more popular as interlining for bags because it's nice and soft and squishy, but it gives great dimension. I mean, you can make a tote bag just really stand up straight when it's placed on a table without any sagging if you use this foam. So I'm using this foam instead of batting, instead of fusible fleece, but you do you. All right, if you are going to use the batting, again, I suggest the addition of some stabilizer like Sulky Fuse and Stitch or Sulky Soft and Sheer. You can go fusible or non-fusible with that because we're going to quilt it all together so it'll stay nice and together. But you do want something with structure to it so you can hang it without the sagging. Okay, so I'm going to use the KK2000 temporary spray adhesive and put that on the back of my background fabric and then smooth that over the top of the foam. You're also going to do that with your backing piece. So now we have a fabric sandwich, right? We have our background fabric and then the backing fabric on either side of that foam. And now I like to plot my quilting lines, but you might have a quilt guide you can put on your presser foot. It's a little hanger arm that kind of fits into the presser foot. And that's a really good guide. If you just want to do straight line quilting, you may not need or feel the need to map out all of your quilting lines with fabric chalk. I like to do it for a couple of reasons. First, I always veer off course, even if I'm using my quilt guide, even if I'm using, a laser light level or a laser light on my machine, all the things that will help me out, I will also use those, but somehow I always veer off course. So this keeps me on track. I make sure to sink my needle in where I've marked on the fabric. Another thing is sometimes I have an idea in my head, like I'm going to do all crosshatch quilting on this. Then I map it out and I think to myself, this is going to be way too busy. Or maybe I'm, working with a print that has a little bit of what am I thinking? Squares and rectangles already on it. And then I go ahead and I map out my crosshatch quilting, let's say, and it's competing with the fabric print and it just makes your eyes, freak out. So when I, have an idea, a lot of the times it doesn't really look great in the end. So when I map out my quilting lines, then I can kind of step back and see what I have planned to do in my head, and I can always change it from here. So if I hate this, I can just get rid of all that chalk and I can start again. And maybe I want to do crosshatch quilting, but do it, on an angle instead of, vertically and horizontal. All right. So Beverly's asking, does the foam have a fusible side? Seems I've seen a fusible foam somewhere. So yes, there are fusible varieties and there are non-fusible varieties. You can certainly use a fusible variety here. I will say when I'm adding a lot of quilting and I'm using a fusible variety, sometimes it can almost look puckery in areas. But that might be because I haven't fused it all the way in certain areas. Maybe there's a bubble here or there that didn't get fused. And then when I quilt along it, my fabric shifts away from the foam a little bit. So I really prefer to use non-fusible foam when I'm going to add a lot of quilting, just so that my fabric has room to kind of expand a little bit and grow with all of the additional thread that I'm adding to it. That's also a reason why I always start quilting in the middle and work my way out to the sides. And I always quilt in the same direction. So if I'm starting on the upper edge of my backing piece and going down, then the next line I always start up going down. I don't, rotate my fabric and start quilting in the other direction, because if you have any spreading of your fabric while you quilt, that's when you can have puckers along your seam lines or along your quilting lines. All right. So that is certainly your choice. I love fusible foam, especially for bags. But again, if you're adding a lot of quilting to this, I would go the non-fusible route. It's also a little bit less expensive. I guess you don't have to pay for the glue. Anyway, after you plot your quilting lines, and I did mine just a crosshatch design every 2 inches. I did a line, and I started, or I drew a line, and I started the middle and worked my way to either side. All right, so now we need to prep our applique letters. So you can choose Happy Holidays. Again, you can write whatever you want to on your card holder. This would also make a great organizer for an office space. You don't even have to add the applique, or maybe you can do appliqued flowers or appliqued hearts or something, or, you know, a phrase that fits with your office or a theme in your room. And you can use this for little reminders, little papers, little, you know, grocery lists, all, you know, to organize those types of things too. So not just for cards, really. All right, so we want to transfer the mirror image of our words onto the paper side of Sulky Perfect Applique Fusible Web, the best fusible web that's out there. It is nice and lightweight. In fact, it's so lightweight that sometimes when I fuse it to my fabrics, I can't even see if it's there. I have to get in there and get a flashlight and be like, has the fusible transferred? All right, so Beverly is saying, where does one find these letters? Some of us are not good with freehand. I actually think I included the templates for Happy Holidays in the blog post, but I do need to confirm that because, quite frankly, I made this project for Christmas in July. I was so ahead of the game, but I'm sharing it with you now. All right. And yes, the templates can be found within the blog post. Thank you so much for putting that in the chat. And you can head on over to the blog post and grab up the templates for these particular letters. I just did big block letters for Happy Holidays. You can choose a font that you like if you don't like this style and print it out on your word processing program and, you know, have your own personalized, unique lettering as well. But make sure you're transferring the mirror image of those designs onto the paper side of your fusible web. Then we're going to fuse our letters to the wrong side of our applique fabric. Again, I used a fat quarter for this, but you really don't need the whole fat quarter. You could probably get away with using some scraps or even using a different fabric for each letter and making it super scrappy. Notice too that, you know, for Happy Holidays, you're only going to find one H, right? So you need to transfer that twice. You get the idea. All right, once we have those fused, then we can cut out all of our letters. I have this a little bit backwards here because I should have talked about the quilting. Once we have transferred our quilting lines, now we can have fun with the threads that we're choosing to quilt our background piece with. So I have 2 metallic threads that I was kind of going back and forth with. One is Sulky Hollow Shimmer thread, and that's on the right side of the screen here. And you can see it has this holographic effect, really, really neat. And one is our Poly Sparkle thread. Poly Sparkle is actually our Poly Deco thread with a strand of hollow shimmer mixed with it. It's easier to sew than the hollow shimmer because it's a round thread and it's mostly polyester, so it behaves very similarly to our regular Poly Deco thread. And it's a 30 weight thread, so a little bit thicker than that 40 weight Poly Deco. So you're going to get more of an effect. You're going to see the thread more. It's going to pop off of the surface of the fabric more because it's a heavier weight thread. So I had a rough time figuring out which one I wanted to use, but ultimately I went with the Poly Sparkle. And you can see in this fabric print, all these little gold bits that you see are metallic printed on the fabric. So it just really goes with the thread so nicely. So once you have chosen the thread that you want for your quilting, you can quilt along all of those letters or all of those lines that you plotted previously. So again, I work my way from the middle, working outwards, and then go across each one of those lines. I did them all horizontally and then all vertically. You get the idea. Actually, I did this on point, so it's going from corner to corner. All right, again, hard for me to remember this project from July, but all right. You can use a walking foot. Yes, that could help. If you are especially using batting, I find that the foam is really great for quilting a project like this. I mean, I wouldn't use it for a quilt because it's so stable and so rigid, right? But with the foam, I find that the surface of it, once you put your fabric on there, it kind of sticks to it. I mean, I still add the KK2000 because I don't want any shifting. But I don't find that I need a walking foot or I need all of these things I would normally need if I'm quilting a bigger quilt. So just putting that out there. But if you have an integrated walking foot, it can't hurt to just engage it and use it. If you prefer to use that when you're quilting anything, definitely walking foot could help you. All right, so now we're going to work on our pocket pieces. So we've got our applique letters fused, cut out, and ready and waiting. We have our background piece all quilted, put aside, and waiting. Now we're going to work on that lower pocket piece. So I took my fabric rectangle and I folded it in half. Would it be lengthwise? No, widthwise. I folded it in half to have one long rectangle for the lower pocket and then pressed it so that I had a crease line at the upper edge of this pocket. Then I folded it around a rectangle of sulky stabilizer. You could use fuse and stitch for this. You could use cutaway plus for this. Something with some great body to it that's going to give it a stiffness, okay? So fold that around. So now we're sandwiching the stabilizer between the layers of our pocket. Now we want to place the lettering for our lower pocket along the upper edge of the pocket where that fold is. So I just laid my longest clear ruler across the top of the pocket, measured down about 3/4 of an inch, and then I placed all my letters equidistant along that upper edge of the pocket. That way, you know, all the upper edges were matching, and then I could just figure out the spacing between each letter. You also want to take into account your seam allowance along the sides or where your binding is going to come over once you bind the finished project. You don't want your binding to interfere with your applique letters. You want to have, you know, a little bit of border beyond them. All right. So we've got our holidays lettering in place, and then we're going to fuse those down so they don't go anywhere. And now we're going to do the same thing with our upper pocket piece. Again, all these dimensions are in the blog post, so you'll know what to cut each pocket, etc. I prepped this with the stabilizer between, and then did the same thing with the lettering for the word happy. Placed it about 3/4 of an inch, each letter from the upper edge fold of that pocket. Then you're going to fuse that in place. And now we're going to stitch our letters down through all of those layers. So you can choose a straight stitch like I did. You can choose a decorative stitch. You can do a blanket stitch, a satin stitch, a wavy edge stitch. Maybe you even have a holiday themed decorative stitch on your sewing machine that would be really cute and fun. Little stars, something like that. You can really make this your own. I like to use a lighter weight thread in the bobbin. So I used a 50 weight cotton thread that matched or coordinated with the fabric colors. All right. No need to use the metallic thread in the bobbin like we would for our quilting because we want the back side of our project to have that pretty quilting. But for this applique, the back of it's going to be hidden behind the pocket. So you can use a nice lighter weight thread. You might want to do some test stitching just to make sure that your settings are working out, that you have a nice balanced stitch, on the top and in the bobbin. So you'll stitch each letter. I did raw edge applique and stitched 1/8 of an inch or so from that raw fabric edge. Once all of your applique stitching is done, we need to finish the lower edge of our upper pocket because the fabric for that pocket does not go all the way to the bottom. Otherwise, when you put something in it, you're definitely not going to see any of your card. It's going to sink all the way to the bottom. So this pocket, the lower edge is about right here. Does this make sense? So when you overlay your lower pocket over the top, that lower edge or that raw edge, it's not going to be seen, but when you're going in and out with your cards, you might feel that raw edge, or you might see it when you're peeking into the pocket. We want to conceal it at any rate. So we're going to take one of our binding strips, or I used a strip that was left over from making my casing, my hanging sleeve that goes on the back of this. You just need a fabric strip that's about 2 1/4 inches wide. Could use some leftover binding maybe that you have from another project. And we're just going to bind the lower edge of the pocket so that that raw edge is concealed. All right, so then I have folded my binding to the wrong side of the pocket, and I just top stitched it down. You can hand sew it if you want a little bit nicer finish, but this is completely concealed underneath the lower pocket. So it depends on how particular you are with finishing that binding fold. So I just sewed along it with my sewing machine to finish that edge of the pocket. All right, so now we're going to place our upper pocket on the background fabric. And really, I just centered the lettering. It's a little bit, longer maybe than my backing fabric. That's okay. We're going to trim it up later because we've now quilted the backing fabric. It might have shrunk just a little bit on us during that process. Don't worry about it. You'll also notice that I have quilting on this pocket as well. I completely blew over those instructions to share with you, but the quilting on this pocket, I did the exact same way, or the exact same quilting that I used for the backing piece. You can quilt this or leave it plain. It's up to you, but I wanted that dimensionality. I wanted it all to kind of flow together. So I mimicked that crosshatch quilting, and I will, come clean with you here. I decided to add the quilting after I had done the applique, but before I did the binding, okay? I know this is getting a little convoluted, but after I had fused the applique and stitched it down, I really thought it needed something else. So in hindsight, I wished I had done the quilting before fusing the applique down, because then I wouldn't have to stop and start all my quilting lines avoiding the applique, right? But I made it a little bit harder on myself. So if you do want quilting on your pockets, I highly suggest add that quilting before you fuse your appliques down. It really just makes it easier. Then you can fuse your appliques and do the applique stitching. So I apologize for forgetting that step, but that's why this pocket is quilted now. So we have our quilted pocket with our applique, and the lower edge of that pocket now has binding on it to conceal those edges. We're going to position it on our quilted backing or background, centering that lettering. And then we're just going to top stitch the bottom edge of the pocket. Notice it's placed about 3 inches or so up from the bottom edge of the background. Okay. Now we're just going to top stitch. You can follow the previous stitching of your binding and make sure that your pocket isn't going to go anywhere. Now we're going to position our lower pocket over our upper pocket. And all the dimensions for this, again, are in the blog post. You can actually eyeball this to make sure that your lettering looks nice, that your holidays is also centered underneath your happy. Use your ruler, make sure that your lettering is equidistant so it's nice and pleasing to the eye. And once you have your lower edge pocket placed, you can also top stitch it or baste it either along those side edges or along the lower edge. At this point, when I placed my pocket, it was extending beyond my background or my backing, quilted backing a little bit. So before I basted it in place, I went ahead and trimmed that up. And you know what? It's really going to be how tall you want your pockets to be. So you might be trimming off a little bit more or a little bit less than I did. I really wanted this pattern to be forgiving so that you could, decide on the height of your own pockets, maybe based on the height of the lettering that you choose to do, that type of thing. So I went ahead and trimmed that off and then basted that lower edge of that pocket together. So then I set that aside and start working on the hanging sleeve for the project. Now, if you happen to have a setup like I do, where I use, these are magnetic knife blocks that I got. They come, or I think you buy them separately, but you can get little magnet clips or heavier duty, just round magnets to hold things on your wall. They're pretty snazzy. I love it because I can change stuff out so easily and just clip a new thing onto my wall whenever I want. If you don't have that, you definitely need a hanging sleeve for the project. And I suggest that your hanging sleeve span almost the entire length of that upper edge of your project. Because, again, we don't want it to sag and we want it nice and supported. You can insert a dowel into the hanging sleeve and then tie a cute ribbon to either end of the dowel and then hang it that way. Or you can thread a ribbon through the casing, tie it at the top and hang it that way. There's all kinds of different ways you can hang this up. But you're probably going to want a hanging sleeve regardless, unless you can clip it to something like I did. All right, so to create our hanging sleeve, we're going to start with a rectangle of fabric and we're going to hem the short ends. I just folded it to the wrong side about 1/2 inch and stitched it down, double fold it. All right, then we're going to fold this in half lengthwise with wrong sides out, so right sides are together, and sew the long raw edge. Now we have our little tube and we need to turn it right side out. So I use my trusty, sulky, multi-purpose turning tool, which I use so often. And as you know, I misplace all these little tools. So I'm going to use it later today in our webcast. But this is what it looks like. It's called the Sulky Multi-Purpose Turning Tool. One edge is this little egg shape. You see that? So one side of the egg has a narrow point and one side has a larger point. So this allows you to get into corners and things, to turn tubes right side out. And this shape makes it so that you don't poke through your stitching accidentally. Okay, so it's a really nice design of the turning tool. On the other side of the turning tool is a very narrow point. We don't want to use this point for poking out most corners because this will surely go through your stitching and poke right out of that corner. So make sure you're using the bigger side when you're doing something like that or turning a tube like this. For this side, I like to use it as a stiletto when I'm feeding things under the presser foot and I don't want to get my fingers too close in there. You can also use it at the pressing board or your ironing board to hold little areas and things like that when you're ironing so that, again, you're not harming your own fingers or fingernails. So this is a really, really great tool. It also has these great little grippies on both sides. So regardless of the edge that you're using, you have a nice little grip for your finger. So this is an awesome tool. It's about $10 at sulky.com. All right, so after you've turned that tube right side out, go ahead and press it nice and flat. And now we are going to bind our project before we place our hanging sleeve, so that we can place that sleeve just under the binding fold on the wrong side of the project. So you probably have a binding method that you enjoy. If not, you can go on over to our blog post or even just search binding. We have a great YouTube tutorial on creating your own binding and sewing your binding a traditional way, mitering the corners as you reach them. So once you have done your first binding stitching line, then you can fold your binding to the wrong side, clip it all over the place, make sure those corners look nice and mitered. This is what the wrong side of my project looks like. And now we can place the hanging sleeve. So what I did was I just centered the sleeve along the upper edge on the wrong side of the project and tucked the upper edge of the sleeve into that binding fold. So now when I finish the back side of my binding, I will be sewing the upper edge of my casing sleeve in place at the same time. So after you finish that stitching of your binding, whether you do that by hand or do that by machine, there's different schools of thought on this, then you need to secure the lower edge of your casing sleeve as well. And I do this by hand because we don't want the stitching line of that to be seen on the right side of our project. We don't want this just straight line interfering with our pretty quilting that we did. So I just do a little whip stitch or slip stitch or ladder stitch, whichever one you prefer. And I just quickly, sew along the lower edge of my binding, going only through that backing fabric. And then once that is done, your project is complete. You can hang it up. You could start putting the cards that you're going to get inside, and hopefully they start coming soon. I know there are some people that are so on top of it, and their cards reach you before Thanksgiving. It's amazing. These people are so organized. Love it. So if that happens, you'll be prepared with your Happy Holidays card holder. And as soon as that first card comes in the mail, you can slip it inside one of those two little pockets and display it. So love that. And you can really make this any shape you want. If you don't have a wall that's wide enough to hang this on where you want your cards, maybe you want them by the front door. So when the mail comes in, you can just put one right there. You can make this a long and skinny rectangle instead of a square. You can say ho, ho, ho on your rectangle and make 3 pockets out of it. So you can definitely customize this based on your needs using the same techniques that I showed you here today. Adding that metallic quilting just really gives it a professional feel, and it definitely looks boutique style. And of course, your cute little applique letters can say whatever you want. So I'm going to go ahead and address some questions and make sure that we are all up to date and everyone is understanding the project. If you are engaging with the post today, giving me those great emojis, somehow chatting with me, or even just saying hello, that's all you have to do to be automatically eligible to win today's gift from Sulky during the So What. And that gift is our Christmas Poly Sparkle Sampler. That's right. So you could win that thread assortment, and all you have to do is say hello to me in the chat or put one of your questions in the comments, and you'll be automatically eligible to win that. All right. Let's see. Lots of people saying cute project. I appreciate that. Have the turning tool, and it's great. Perfect. All right. Okay. Okay, it is like a mini quilt. There are some really cute mini quilt racks to hang them on. That's another great idea too. This could hang freestanding. It doesn't necessarily have to be on your wall. So thank you for saying that. Perfect. Fun project to do on a rainy day. I love that, Linda. Anita says this would be a great gift to make for the moms that have everything already. Yes, we all need a little hanging organizer or something for all that paperwork that comes, all the mail, junk mail that comes, you know. All right. So great that you made this first to give us some helpful tips. You know, that's why I'm here. That's why we do the so what, is so I can tell you all the things I did wrong. And then you don't have to do those things. You can just get right to it and have great success. All right. Let's see. Oh, this is such a nice comment, Jana. She says, I don't think I would ever finish anything successfully without sulky. Love that. Thank you so much. I bought the entire set of Polystar. Would this be okay to use? Yes. Poly Sparkle thread used to be called Polystar, but is now Poly Sparkle. So if you did purchase up the Poly Sparkle when it was called Polystar, it is the same thing. So that's perfect to use for this. And it's such a great metallic thread. It's so fun to sew. Anita says those shiny threads are so pretty. I couldn't agree more. Love it. All right. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of questions. So if you do have a question and I didn't get it didn't get to it today, you can always email us at info@sulky.com and we'd be happy to assist you there as well. All right, perfect. Well, I hope you are all prepared to join me in about an hour for our gingerbread puff ornaments in the hoop free class over at sewingonline.sulky.com. There are door prizes to be had over there, mega ones. Lots of information about using puffy foam and felty and doing in the hoop projects, and more inspiration for using these designs in other ways to deck the halls for the holidays coming up. So I hope you will join me over there at 2 p.m. Eastern Time at sewingonline.sulky.com. And I will see you all there, and I'll